the sound, mute the people, and off we go. All right, see if anybody, there's somebody. All right, so I looked just before class to update this. Every 6 months, Microsoft puts out their intelligence report. And this comes from, you know, when you have a problem and it pops up a box saying, please tell Windows about this problem. Please tell Microsoft. They've been accumulating that for about 10 years. They started it with XP, so they really know a lot. They know how many machines have crashes. They know how many machines have malware of certain types because there's a Microsoft malicious software removal tool that downloads and automatically removes the malware and tells Microsoft. So they have a lot of information. So, and now they have Azure, which is their cloud service. So a bunch of people are running services there, and they can see the attacks on the servers that are running on Azure. So here you go. The incoming attacks on Microsoft Azure's come primarily from China and the United States that are tied, and Korea is way down in the small change. So this is something that I hope nobody has any illusions about. Politicians sometimes talk about how Russia is hacking us or China is hacking us, but the #1 aggressor in cyberspace is us. We are most of the victims and we are most of the attackers. We are most of the internet use right here for positive and negative. Yeah. Is what?
Norse, where it shows all the attacks.
Oh, that Norse attack map, the Pew Pew map, that is the joke in the industry. As far as anybody can tell, that is just a cartoon based on nothing.
Yeah,
it doesn't, and it looks kind of cool, and then you wish you could find out what it is, and there's no explanation of what it is at all. It seems to just be some kind of show to try to trick investors into sending you money. Not something that accurately measures anything, as far as anybody can tell. All right, so here's the ones that are calling home to command and control servers, and you see the command and control servers are almost all in China, 89% in China, followed by the United States at 4%. So you could say all the criminals are in China, but it probably is fair to say a bunch of those are people in America that have stolen machines in China to act as the CNC server. But of course, it's very difficult to know which of those things is true. Here's the countries with the highest amount of drive-by downloads. These are pages that will infect you by just viewing the page without you clicking on anything. These are fairly rare, but there are browser exploits that do this, and people jump on them. And as you can see, it's quite the rage in Taiwan. 7 pages out of every 1,000 will have drive-by malware on them. Everyone else has much less. And the United States is lower. But anyway, here's the types of malware. Trojans are the most common. 6% of all malware instances are Trojans, and down you have these other things like viruses and backdoors and password stealers and so on. Here's browser modifiers. These are your unwanted software categories. So the most popular type are the browser modifiers that change your home page and your search engine, and the software bundlers. You think you're installing something like a PDF reader, but you're getting other software bundled with it that does rotten things, and then adware is down there. Here's the encounter rates for ransomware. Ransomware is primarily a problem in other countries. The highest ransomware is in Czech Republic, Korea, and Italy, and the United States is down in the lowest with 0.02%. But people are very, very afraid of it anyway because it's quite expensive if it happens to you. So anyway, that's I got out of this latest report. And then there's Linux. Linux has all the vulnerabilities and all the attacks and all the defenses, at least in their early versions that Windows had, but it's all much less of a big spreading problem because Linux is so diverse. You can't make much of a spreading worm on Linux because there are all these different versions of it that don't really work the same way. So anyway, you can still learn about the vulnerabilities of Linux and make it more secure. There are patches to put on. In my experience, Ubuntu patches are very poorly made and dangerous, and I don't put them on much. You don't need them as much, and they tend to crash things more, although maybe they're a little better these days, but I highly doubt it. Anyway, there are common features of Linux to understand. Samba is a very popular product on Linux. You run this and it lets you have file shares that share with Windows machines. So your Linux machines can connect to Windows shares and your Windows machines can connect to Linux shares. This means Samba has to accept the password hashes that are flying over the network from Windows machines and understand them and let you in. And it is quite difficult to configure to do that. At least it was a few years ago. I haven't tried it lately, but the people I knew that ran mixed Linux and Windows environments that configured this, they swore a lot and they drank a lot. And now in my experience, I've frequently just had to give full control to everybody to get the Linux users in the shares, which is what a lot of people do, and that's of course a bad practice. But when you have trouble recognizing users from the data that goes over the network, you end up doing things like that to get through the day. Anyway, that's Samba. Their CVE website, of course, finds various vulnerabilities. Here's Linux kernel CIFS module used to share with Windows machines, and it's had its problems. CUPS is their printer sharing daemon, and it's had its problems. Everything has its problems, and you have to keep patching things. OpenVAS is the open source version of Nessus, and they can, of course, look for all kinds of vulnerabilities on Linux, and they can find the services that are running. That can use it as an enumeration tool, or you can use it as a vulnerability scanner. If you have Trojans, the Trojans will do something unapproved on your machine. Usually they allow someone else to remote control it. They can also upload and download files, steal passwords, and log keystrokes, or encrypt or destroy the files, which is the latest ransomware rage. So Linux Trojans can be disguised as identical legitimate programs, and you often have rootkits in them. Rootkits compromise your machine right down to the very heart of the kernel. So every time you reboot, it's infected again, and all the software you run is under control of the attacker. So even when you run cleaning tools and such, they may not find anything. Yeah.
How hard is it to build a rootkit?
Simple rootkits are quite easy to build. The kind that were used in like 2008. Yeah, we make them. We come awful close to making them in the malware analysis class. The old days, it was very easy. All you had to do was change a couple of addresses in the SSDT, the System Service Descriptor table. There's a table in Windows which you can write to, which has the address of all the kernel routines. So all you do is take a routine, like the routine that shows the list of files in the directory, and change that number and have it go to your program that checks for files and only shows you the files I want you to see. And from then on, every tool that draws the directory will lie. So it was that easy, and this is how security tools used to work, like Zone Alarm. It worked by hooking the SSDT. Modern versions of Windows have made it harder, but it's not really that hard. It's a relatively simple development activity to make a rootkit. Now, however, modern antivirus and such engines know most of the techniques, and they'll spot it. But there's always more rootkits coming out. And once you've got one, you can never really be sure it's gone. This is why the general rule is if the attacker got administrator rights on your system, you should not clean it. You should throw it away and restore from backup. If you run some kind of cleaning tool, you never really know it's clean after that point. It is strictly an amateur move to clean malware off a system. You should just restore from a known good backup. Yeah.
Back in the Vista days, someone said, "Oh, this ad came. Someone put something on the system. You're infected. All this stuff. Call Microsoft."
Right.
I called them. All of a sudden, there's this click.
Yeah.
It's like, my name's Mike. His name was Mike. He said, "I can clean up your system. Let me remote into your." And as soon as he remoted it in, I saw him pull out the command line. I went control out delete.
Oh, good.
And he was dumping my files. He got rid of my Google Drive.
Oh, yeah.
I called him back up. I said, "Mike, I got your IP address." You click. And so I started texting him saying, I'm alerting the authorities. I'm alerting you better, if you ever put on this machine again, I will where you're acting.
You know, well, you know, this
that
is
was a real problem for me because I thought myself was not, but I got rid of it that quick on my Google Drive. Didn't have much on that.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you mention it because this has happened to a lot of people. It happened to my landlord. It happened to my sister. It happened to my grader. This is extremely effective to have something either that pops up on the screen. Now, the way they got my grader is until about 2 years ago, the Google hits for AOL were all fake. So if you had a problem with your AOL account and you Googled the AOL help desk, all of the front page were all fake AOL help desks. And when you call them, they lie to you and put malware in your machine and take over your machine. And it's really effective. I'm amazed. Lots of people that are not stupid fall for this, where something pops up and says, call, and we're Microsoft. They pretend to be Microsoft, and they take over your machine. It's amazing how many people fall for it. They're good social engineers. You can do anything if you're smooth, like Trump. Yeah. Yeah, but you know.
I saw them, and all of a sudden everything started dumping.
Yeah, you're better than a lot of them. My landlord paid for a service, and they spent hours working on his machine, and then they started popping up boxes all the time and calling him on the phone. And then a couple days later, he said, "Oh, I think I made a mistake." You sure did. And it was quite a chore to clean that junk off. Anyway, all right, you can also try to train your users, keep them aware of security, so hopefully they don't fall for this stuff as much. Unfortunately, this is pretty ineffective, but it is something you can do, user awareness training. A lot of people argue that this is so ineffective as to be a waste of time, but it seems like educating end users of some value anyway. You have to everybody has to keep watching the news in this business, which is kind of a drag, especially people that make software have to constantly watch it to see if they have to put out updates. Linux distributions like Windows have boxes that will pop up telling you to put on updates, but it's a whole lot less important typically for Linux machines. Anyway, there are secure configurations you can put on Linux. For example, SE Linux, Security Enhanced Linux, was I think developed to meet military requirements. And it has a whole bunch of extra features, and they've added quite a few of them into Ubuntu servers these days, so I find it annoying when I try to do SQL injection and such. There are special moderations inside there. That adds mandatory access control, kind of like Microsoft's folder protection. There are extra rules, like when you run software, there are configuration settings that limit what that software can do, what folders it can read and write to, for example. And there's something called Security Blanket you can buy that will then automatically configure your machine to meet a certain standard. And if you are a large corporation or you deal with contractors or big companies, they will want you to meet certain well-defined standards, like military standards, and you'll want to make sure this is an easy way to make sure our systems meet that standard. All right. So I got some more Cahoots, and I think that's it. Let's bring them up here. I do want to leave that site and instead go to this one. Good. There we go. 358-915. Some of these names are getting kind of terse. There we go. All right. Guess I'll wait another 10 seconds because I remember 18 is the number. Maybe not. All right. I think I'm calling it 5 questions. All right. What tool will scan your Windows computers and find vulns? Right, that's the MBSA. Most security professionals say that the most important thing you can do is put on updates. It's certainly not absolutely proven that that's true, but most people believe that. All right. What's the Ask toolbar? All right, you guys knew anyway. I think I somehow missed the slide. There was a Microsoft diagram of all the types of pups, and it's one of the common pups is the Ask toolbar. All right. So what defense prevents exfiltration of sensitive data? All right, that's DLP, data loss prevention, that watches the outgoing traffic to see if your secrets are leaving. All right. And What's the Linux utility that shares folders with Windows? That's Samba. Good, a popular answer. All right, what system puts mandatory access control on Linux? Hit the wrong one. There's no turning back. All right, that's SE Linux, Security Enhanced Linux. All right, so it's tip. And E, I think E is Eric. And Hooty Hoo, I don't know who Hooty Hoo is. Is Hooty Hoo in the room? Well, then here comes a chat. That might be Hooty Hoo telling me who they are. I know Tip. Yeah, I figured out who you were, Tip, thanks. But Hooty Hoo, oh good. I see who Hooty Hoo is too. Good. So I think, yeah, E, that's what I thought. I think I've identified all the people. Life is good. All right, so I think I'm going to shut this down and go to the lab. That's it for today. We'll do it again next week.